So just to review some widgets, and I want to point out something. This information is all taken from this widgets page. I linked this from Canvas because it's a really good, this is actually, tkdocs.com is actually the official documentation for TK. I want to point out a few things. Okay, so we have basic widgets, more widgets, windows and dialogues. There's everything you want to know about this program, and it is a huge, overwhelming amount of information. So I'm not going to give it all to you, but I just wanted to give you a tour. Over here, you can see that there's a lot of stuff here. And this is built as a tutorial that you can actually follow, which is useful. The first real example, installing TK concepts. But also, and this is really kind of interesting, TK is not just for Python. TK is a library that's available in Python. It's available to, this is Ruby, this is Perl. I think this, I can't remember what that one is. Can't. But it has, under each thing, right, under each widget, it shows you how to create that widget in all of those different languages. Make sure that when you're using code or you're looking at code, you're paying attention to the Python one with the blue and yellow Python logo, because you don't want to be grabbing the wrong sort of stuff. So it will go through and it will explain each widget. It'll show you some of the things that you can configure about each widget, like size, padding, styles, all kinds of things. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you some of these examples, but if you want to go deeper or find out what else can I do with this thing, that's a good place to go. So the frame we talked about is a container. Some of the things that you might do, okay, like it has the ability to have a raised border or a sunken border, which looks kind of like that. Those are kind of old school vibes when you're creating user interfaces, but you can certainly use those if you want. So the frame is a way of organizing your information. The frame doesn't actually do any interaction with the user. The frame is just there to organize other widgets. Okay, so the label can display text and images. It can display text that's been formatted in different ways, even using different fonts. And you can see an example, Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. And these are taken directly from this page. Okay, so it's the same information. There's just more of it there. So I'm trying to isolate some of this and show you just some of the possibilities. Okay, again, buttons can be configured to have graphics on them, or text, or graphics and text. Notice the buttons on each system, they kind of look like that system. So if Mac OS next week releases a new software update for that system software and the buttons look different, then the buttons in TKInter will look like Mac OS buttons again, because the TK interface actually uses the system level stuff, which is nice. That's actually a good thing. So TK button, again, master, text, command. Usually buttons are associated with some kind of function, although they don't necessarily have to be. Okay, so you can do checkboxes, right? Checkboxes. Again, a checkbox can be attached to a variable. It can be attached to a command. They have a text associated with them. And you can have on value and off value. What that means is when the box is checked, this variable gets set to this value. When it's unchecked, it gets set to that value. So you can have it set to affect those variables. TK has a really interesting thing, though. It doesn't like to interact directly with Python variables. In fact, it has its own object. So you'll see up here, it says measure system, string var. This is short for a string variable. There are variables for all the major data types: Boolean, integer, float, string, right? Once I create that, then that is the variable. That's how I attach or couple that variable with that object. So on the screen, a single checkbox takes that much text, and now when I check or uncheck that box, this variable, which is a string variable object, gets set to one of these two strings. That's how I associate a string with a checkbox. Radio buttons are similar. The difference between radio buttons and checkboxes, in case you weren't clear on this, is that if I have 3 checkboxes like this, I can check all of them or none of them or in any combination. If I have a radio group like this, I can check one in that group and it unchecks the others. So that's the big difference. You can use images or text as the labels. But you can see here, in this case, each radio button is its own TK object, and the way that they're tied together is through the common variable. So phone, phone, phone. Phone is a string variable, and I'm saying the value of each of those when the respective thing is checked. Entry is going to be very commonly used. This is what you want to use when you enter text boxes. You can set it up to be a password. You can do a variety of different things, but a password is one of the options. Again, the proper way to do it is to associate that with a string variable. There are other ways to do this other than binding a string variable. The difference is when I used get, that was a one-time thing. Basically, get says whatever's in there, when I click that button, I'm gonna get it, and if it changes after that, that doesn't impact that variable. When I bind it to a string variable and put that as the variable, every time I type a new letter in here, it automatically updates that variable on the fly, which is actually a better way to do things. I know this is a ton of information, but remember, what you're doing with this for this project is going to be very simple, very straightforward. Okay, combo boxes are the drop-down menus that we're used to seeing. Again, you can tie it to a text variable or a string variable, and those are how they look. This is an active one. This is a disabled one, in case you wanted to know the difference. Disabled just means you can't interact with it. Yes?
So for the entry windows, can you input multiple entries on one window? Or
Yes.
so like with the employee database, how it'll ask you when you're adding an employee, it'll ask you name, salary, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Can you have just a whole list and have them type?
Yes. Yeah. And then the nice thing about an interface like that is because you could have like a way to edit it, and then you could pop that information in there. Then the user can edit it in that box and then save it, and then it disappears when you save it. So thinking about that kind of stuff is kind of cool too. But yeah, that's how it would work. The employee database, you'd have one for name, one for their job, one for their salary. I mean, you could have a drop-down list that has all of the options for their job title or something like that too, if you wanted to, so people couldn't just make up jobs. So that's how that would work. So that is just some of the stuff that you can do. Check buttons, radio boxes. But I wanted to show you, if you look at more widgets, you can do list boxes. You can do, here's an example of a possible window can look like with a list box in it. There's, you can do scroll bars if you have a large piece of text. So there's a larger text entry window there. They have sliders, what's called a spin box. think you've seen those before probably, where you click up and down to change the number. Progress bars. So there's all kinds of stuff there. Um, and if something one of those interests you, all of the information you need to start out is right there in that website.